I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a work session tonight, so there'll be a lot of discussion. And I wanted to thank every one of you for coming. It's important that you come and visit with us and give us your opinions, and it helps a whole lot. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to take off of the agenda because it just does not meet the things that we need to discuss. That's item number C, if you have an agenda. It was a discussion on the appropriations and transfers. We've had basically 3 weeks to go through this stuff. And if there are questions, we understand that Mr. Stanley and Carolyn Stemmel can help us on that stuff. So I don't think that we need to talk about it and take up everybody's time. So the first thing on the agenda is a presentation from the Economic Development Authority for 2021 and a budget proposal, and that's by Mr. Parsons and Mr. Daly. And hi, Mr. Parsons, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Hi, Mr. Daly, how are you?
I'm just here for support, sir.
Oh, support. Go over and prop him up, he's gonna need it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and to present our proposed budgets for the remainder of this fiscal year, 2020, and then also a proposal for the full fiscal year 21. I want to start by thanking our treasurer, Jory Martin. She has put many hours into the formation of both of these budgets. We've gone through this line item by line item and looked very carefully at what we feel we will need to continue our operations going forward, to be able to service debt, continue to try to straighten out the things of the past while providing the community with a viable economic development authority in the present and the future. So what I presented you each with, we have a copy here of what we would feel we would need for the remainder of this fiscal year for FY20. And then we have the 2021 budget. We can go over either one of them first if you like. I'm glad to answer any questions you have. We can kind of go down through it. I don't know if you want to go line item by line item. That would take a considerable amount of time. But if you want to go through and hit the highlights, we can do that, whichever you would prefer.
I believe hitting the highlights and starting with the single pager first.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Okay, so the single pager here is what we feel we would need to continue operations for the remainder of this fiscal year. The left-hand column where it says 2019 and 20 approved, that's a budget that my immediate predecessor, John Anzavino, did. And that was kind of a baseline that we worked off of, working with Heather and the finance department here at the county. That's where you see the codes on the left, 1001, 1005, and so forth, so that we're in line with the county's financial system since we're under the fiscal agency agreement. So looking at these line items right now, you'll see the cash balance from January to 15th of $374,766. You'll see down two figures more, you'll see the $36,255 or $225. That's the rents that we're currently receiving at 1325 Progress Drive, 400 Kendrick Lane, the Stokes apartment, and the grazing lease. You'll see that figure significantly less than it has been in the past because we've sold 404 Fairground. Haven't had a tenant in there for several months. And then also that doesn't include the rent that we were getting from the Stokes market at one point. So that's a conservative number. We certainly plan to lease out more space at our office building, 400 Kendrick Lane. We have 3 units out there. We need to make some repairs to the roof, some repairs to the interior, and we feel we can lease those spaces out. So we're hopeful that that figure will go way up when we get those units ready out there. But the $200,159.23 That would be the figure that we feel we would need in addition to our rents going forward for this fiscal year. So looking down through, you can see the salaries, administration, FICA, VRS, all the different line items that you would expect to see. Audit fees, we put in $17,500. We are going to have to solicit a private sector firm, just to update you on the audit. The Auditor of Public Accounts Office has said that they are not going to do our audit for us, and we must find a private sector firm to do our FY18 and 19 audits. I've got a draft RFQ put together. Our attorney and our accountant are looking at it to make sure that it's complete. And as soon as we get the go-ahead from them, we'll get that out. We're hoping to put that out for a couple of weeks, then get responses from auditors. Hopefully I'll be making phone calls to try to drum up someone to take this work on. And we'll obviously keep you guys up to date as to how those efforts are going.
Did you say that we would be about 2 weeks away from that starting to happen, or do we have a time frame for when we could feasibly get another auditor?
Well, I'm hopeful to be able to get the RFQ out by the end of the week, if I can get the feedback that I need to know that it's good to go. I'm proposing we advertise for 2 weeks and have the deadline for submissions be February 28th. I'm hoping then that a committee of our board, probably our finance committee, could then look at the applications that we get, maybe do some interviews or at least some phone calls with potential auditing firms the following week, and then award shortly thereafter, and hopefully get the ball rolling in early March. And I wish I knew what kind of time frame to tell you for how long it'll take them to get that work done. The good news is our accountants, Carolyn and Heather, have been working on the adjusted journal entries, and I think they're pretty close to having those ready to go. So by the time we get an auditing firm in place, I think we'll have the information on our end that we need to get it to them and then get the ball rolling.
We need to remember the tax period that we shift. They won't talk to us until April.
It could be, yeah, but tax season going on, we're not sure how that'll affect the ability to procure an auditor. Absolutely. So we'll have to take that into account as well. Looking down through the rest of some of these expenses, just a few things. Scholarships in the past, the EDA gave out $3,000 of scholarships per year. We felt that given our financial situation that we should reduce that down to $1,500. We still want to participate and give the scholarships, but we thought it would be more fiscally prudent to make a reduction there. The electric, water, sewer, and so forth, that's based on historical usages. However, with selling 404 Fairground, that'll go down some. If the sale of the market goes through, that'll certainly help us a great deal, especially on the flood insurance, which is over $12,000 a year for the market alone. We have good interest in the apartments. We may well get rid of them too. So if that happens, a lot of these utilities will go way down and we'll enjoy some cost savings there. Same with the insurances. Obviously those will go down as well as we sell things. If you flip the page over, you'll see the remainder. The interest expense we have down in debt service. Maintenance we moved to capital expenditures. And then we just have a small buffer of contingency, $1,000. So the total operating cost that we have, total 6 months, is $236,384.23. Monthly, that's $39,000. Capital expenditures, I mentioned about getting the Kendrick Lane offices up and running, and so that's what the $15,000 is for. We're hoping that'll cover the roof repairs just on that eastern end of the building, and then the interior repairs to the plaster and the drywall to get those marketable.
Is that all 3 apartments or all 3 suites, or is that just the 1 suite?
That would be all 3. Unit C, which is a small unit right next to us, doesn't require a lot of work there. I think there's a couple of places that need patch. Unit A is the one that has the most damage from the bad roof. The roof gets progressively worse on the building as you head east for some reason, so that end of the building needs the most work in A, and then coming back this way in B. So, absolutely. So now in debt service, you see the needed funding for debt service for 6 months, assuming that the IT federal payments keep coming in, which helps to offset somewhat. Under debt service, you see with First Bank and Trust, First Bank and United, what our principal and interest payments are for the loans that we have with each of those banks and for each of those projects listed. Then you see the monthly debt service minus the IT federal is $112,000. And then the total monthly operating in debt is a $152,044. And back up to the debt service for just a second. As you know, we realized that on the IT federal loan, we were paying a flat $40,000 a month instead of the $49,718 that we should have been paying in order to retire that loan in 30 years. So the board has said that we need to start making the payments in that amount again to get back up to speed and get back on track there. So that would be an increase in that debt payment. However, thanks to the board renegotiating the interest rate on the line of credit at First Bank and Trust, and they're saving us $5,657 a month in debt service, that cost savings will help to offset that increased payment for the IT federal loan, and we'll get that paid down more quickly.
Mr. Chair, if I could, a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Principal. One, and I want to thank, Carolyn got me a invoice today for the last 18 months of debt service that the county owes the EDA, and we're in that process. I want to say $125,000–$30,000 or so from those outstanding items. That I'm assuming that will help the bottom line for the next 6 months. On here, you've got the police department, $131,000. Is that morally backed by the town of Farmville?
Yes, the only security for that loan is a moral obligation by the town.
So if the county Board of Supervisors said, we're not going to cover that for the town, and the EDA decided not to make payment on that, that would fall against the town of Farmville?
As it relates to the moral obligation, yes.
Okay.
The loan is in our name, but the only security for that loan is the moral obligation on the part of the town.
That's in part because the town owned the property prior to the loan being given and the contract being issued for construction. Is that correct?
They own the land.
Mr. Stanley,
Yes, sir.
and they are the ones who use the facility. The EDA does not.
Okay.
Do we know what would actually happen if they did that? Or if you did that?
I'm not entirely sure. That would be a good question for our attorneys.
Okay.
But, I would rather find another solution. I would rather that for the sake of the taxpayers that the town just pays what they owe. We get this over with. Restate my plea to the town to sit down with us and work with us outside of court, not spend any more taxpayer dollars on attorney fees. I've said before, it's going to be finance professionals to get to the bottom of all this, not attorneys. So whenever the town would like to sit down with us and work through these issues, we're ready.
May I
Go
say,
ahead.
Mr. Well, as a citizen of this county, I think that it would be a very poor decision to default on any loan in any way, shape, or form, because you are sending a message to your community that default is okay. And I do not believe that that is the appropriate way. So the town is fully aware of its moral obligation, and I think that eventually this is going to work out. We just have to work it out, as you said, outside of the court system if possible. But I would never advise anybody to default on a loan. Absolutely. It sends a very poor message to our community. So anyway, my 2 cents.
Understood. Any other questions on the 6 month?
If there's anything that we can do to help you, I'd like to offer our hands to be able to do that.
We appreciate it. You know, on both of these budgets, we put together very conservative numbers. And they're a worst case scenario in the sense that we're not counting on getting anything, whether it's from the town for the police department. This isn't assuming that we're selling any properties, leasing any space. So if we do any of those things, and I hope to do a lot of those things, then these figures should improve somewhat. And of course, for every dollar we get in rent or every bit of debt that we pay off and can possibly restructure, those would be cost savings that the county and the taxpayers would have in funding this.
Do we have additional questions?
I note, like in insurance for next year, you've got insurance for all properties dropping 36 to 22. Is that dropping your flood insurance on Stokes? Is that why that's dropping? It's going from 36, 922 to 22, 334, so it's about a $14,500 drop. That's what my guess was dropping the flood insurance, and 404 Fairgrounds Road probably as well. But I mean, obviously you haven't closed on the deal for Stokes, but I know it's...
No, because it ain't a deal till it's a deal.
Yeah.
She may have, I do see that drastic difference there. She may have put that in there. I'll have to check and see.
That's the only thing that was, that much of a difference would have been that insurance.
It's 12.8.
But on the other side, on the 6 months to finish out the rest of the current year, you do have $13,000 in debt service on the Stokes building. That could possibly go away again if that closing were to move forward.
Right, absolutely. Selling the Stokes market alone, there's an opportunity to work with First Bank to possibly restructure the remaining balance on that loan and realize some cost savings on a monthly basis in debt service. Of course, if we sell the market and the apartments, then that whole loan goes away, and we're going to save $2,173 a month on that loan's principal and interest, $12,000 a year on flood insurance, of course the utilities, and then the property casualty and liability insurances on those properties would all go away too. So as we get these buildings sold, that's going to help quite a bit.
Mr. Parsons, what's the time frame on the closing of this loan or closing of this property, Stokes' Mark?
On the Stokes market, the closing is now looking like it's going to be at the end of the month. We were hoping it would be this week, but there is an easement issue that needed to be addressed. It needs to be ratified at a board meeting. So after we spoke with Mr. Huck and our attorney, everybody was in agreement that it's best to have a board meeting, ratify the easement. It'll be on the deed for Mr. Huck, and everything will happen the way it's supposed to. We didn't want to rush it, take a chance of something going wrong. So as much as I want to close on that property, we felt it was best to be patient and prudent.
Can I ask a question?
Question?
You mentioned that the preferable way to solve this is through accountants rather than lawyers. So is there a defined process and a time frame established already that supports that philosophy
As it relates to working with the town,
with the town on the police department?
well, we've met with the town in the past. We have a disagreement about the interest rate that should be applied to the principal balance of the police department project and the subsequent interest that would be due. The town is maintaining that they should only have to pay 1.5%, and we feel that we are due what we are truly owed from what we paid the banks, which is 3%. So, we had some talks this summer, and we had talked about a compromise interest rate of 2.25%, just to get this over with, and so we can all move on. But it's my understanding now the town is not interested in working with us outside of court, and it's our understanding that they're looking to address this in a legal venue.
So then your comment about your preference in solving this thing is contingent on the town cooperating, and they've demonstrated that they are not in a cooperative mood.
Yes, sir. That's exactly correct. The
That's very
EDA has said on several occasions that in fall of 2017, there was an agreement, a resolution by the town asking for the EDA to finance the police station anticipated at 1.5% interest. Then in January of 2018, there was an email back to the town that there was interim financing at 3% and there was not financing at 1.5% available. And that was sent back to the town at that time, and there's internal emails between the town acknowledging that. Since that time, the town has said that it should be 1.5%, and they are not interested in compromising on the issue.
So the bottom line is the courts are going to have to figure this out.
From what it
We
looks
are-
like right now.
We're not going to get resolution through accountants because you require two cooperative parties to do that, and we only have one.
And we all agree on what, the town also agrees with what the actual construction cost was. It's just a question of the interest, and the accountants agree how it's been calculated, and what the interest at 3% and what the interest at 1.5% is. It's a question of, as you say, agreeing that you want to pay it. And the EDA's concern is anything that the town does not pay on their facility means that the EDA pays it, which means we have to rely on the county to actually finance it.
And the town people who are a part of the county will be paying that as well.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
As
As well as paying both lawyers.
And the legal process that they have underway now, what's the time frame for that decision too?
There is no
Yeah.
time frame
I'm not sure.
current at this
I'm not
point.
sure when the
Well, I'm
next-
aware that the county is, the town has gotten court approval to amend their case.
Yes.
So there's a time window to that, so at least you know.
But that may be extended again. Every time you turn around, this case is now well over 6 months old, and it was going to be this, and then it was this, and then it was this, and then it was this, and it keeps expanding. We need another extension, so I can't say when they will actually reach the case.
And the reason I bring this up is because although I agree with the councilwoman about you never want to default on a loan, especially in this type of environment, that seems to be the only pressure option that you have. That if they were faced with the choice of not having the police department that they're currently operating under and negotiating a settlement, what do you think that they would do? I just raised that for your further consideration.
We've thought those things, same thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot. You brought it out pretty
Pointing out
good.
the obvious.
Yeah, point out the obvious, that's right.
And every day that goes by is another $526 of interest that accrues on the police department project that the taxpayers of this county will ultimately have to pay.
Yeah, I'd make them an offer they couldn't refuse.
Thanks for your comment.
The other budget is for the full fiscal year of '21. Same categories. Welcome to look down through there if you have any questions.
Just to
Mr. Carter? You had mentioned in a couple of the other meetings today that is it the hospitalization or the, some sort of taxes may be going up 10%, and were they budgeting an extra 10% into that? Not necessarily this group, but we had mentioned it a couple of times today. Medical insurance. I mean, did y'all add an extra 10% into your medical insurance bill?
Majority,
You got 5%?
we see a
Okay.
majority, I think, budgeted a 5% increase to try to anticipate.
Okay.
Increases.
Well, we've been kind of talking today 10%, not that it matters because it's just a
Okay.
budgetary number anyway. Because we never know what they're gonna go up to. I just thought I'd throw it in there.
Okay. Well, we welcome your feedback in this. I know we've talked before about, marketing activities and so forth, and you'll see on page 2, under capital expenditures, we put in 10,000. I've recently spoken with a national site selector to try to get a feel from him on the best ways to market. He gave me a bunch of great ideas. And I think 10,000 would be a good starting point as it relates to some of our efforts to get out in front of site selectors and maybe tag along with VDP on visits and trips and so forth. The site improvement under capital expenditures, that's $75,000. You've all heard me talk about the tier ranking system through VDP, and our highest ranking site in the county, our most competitive site around the state, is the Stevens site. It had a site sector score of 87.5, which out of 100 that's pretty good. It also has the least amount of cost needed to take it from a tier 2 up to a 3 and really a 4. So we thought that we would start with getting the due diligence items on that.
For people that don't know, a tier 4 is a site that's basically ready to start development on.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm. So tier 1 is just raw land with a willing owner. Tier 2 is it's zoned properly and some due diligence work has been done. Tier 3, you have all the due diligence documents like phase 1 environmentals, wetland studies, all the things that a buyer would look for before going to closing. So having those done in advance makes it more attractive. Tier 4 is having all the infrastructure in place, water, sewer, electric, fiber, and gas if it's in the area. All of our sites, we're so fortunate, because that's the big expense item. That can be millions of dollars. All of our sites, Happy Creek, Avtex, Front Wall, Warren County Industrial Park, and Stevens, they've all got all the available infrastructure already. So that's why I think when we make this investment that we could be able to leapfrog tier 3 and go right to a 4. And then tier 5 is where you've got a pad and it's leveled, compacted, and literally ready to start digging footers.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this other one?
Maybe I missed it, but it says EDA has not billed the county or town for Lease Run Parkway.
As of this evening, we have, thanks to Carolyn, she finally got through the nebulous entanglement that is the Lease Run project. And we're very grateful to Carolyn for all of her hard work in getting us a number that we feel comfortable that we can legitimately bill the county for. And the town for Lease Run, and also some of the past projects as well. So we're very grateful for her help in that regard.
Did I miss what the potential income from the town on the Leach's Run Parkway is? I heard what the county's bill was.
I want to say 97,000.
So a couple $100,000.
I don't remember right off the top of my head, I'm
We
sorry.
can find out for you though.
Yeah, and I thought the county total was 235. Am I off?
That's probably right if you, Yeah, it's like 150 and 75, yeah, something like that.
For each run in the older project?
Combined, so you're at that 235 is probably not far off for the 18 months for all the projects, including the front.
So that would go a long way toward floating our boat until the new fiscal year. I don't know if that would quite get us there. It would be close. It would help for a couple, 3 months anyway.
Any additional questions? Can you give us, I know that we're talking budget, but would you be willing to talk to us a little bit about some of the things you've got going on the other properties that may help give the good feeling out there that things are happening, because I know that they are. We've had conversations and they've all been good, so.
We've been working for a few months now with a national developer who specializes in brownfield sites. That's a gentleman from New York City. He has a group of investors that invest in brownfield redevelopment throughout the country. He's reached out to me recently and is starting to ask a lot of good questions about what's possible on the AVTEX site. So I've reached out to FMC, the US EPA, and State DEQ, and they're looking at the questions that this gentleman had for his investors, and we're hoping to get a site visit from them either later this month or perhaps more realistically in March. We also have a manufacturer who at one point was interested in the Ball Drive building, but now is more interested in a 20-acre site where they may build a facility that would suit their needs. They were unable to find any existing buildings in Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, or Virginia down the 81 corridor. It met their needs, so they're now looking at raw land. So we're trying to get them interested in the AVTEX site or Happy Creek or Stevens. AVTEX is flat as a pancake, so there's not as much site development cost out there, although there are, some hoops to jump through being a brownfield site. We also have a couple of projects that we're working with the State Economic Development Office on, some new ones that I can't really get into a whole lot of detail right now. We've had an out-of-county landowner who owns a good-sized piece of land out on 340. They were in last week. They're interested in possibly rezoning some of their property from commercial to industrial to try to have a mixed-use activity out there on their property. So we've been working with them. I've shared some leads with them that I have to see if we can get something going out there for them. And as I mentioned in my report before, we're getting a lot more interest here recently in out-of-town investors. The gentleman with the LOI for the apartment is from Alexandria. And it's nice to see that folks from out of the area are recognizing the potential that we have here and are looking to come in and capitalize on it.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next discussion is on the payment of delinquent taxes and business license fees by contractors prior to the issuance of building permits. That's David Dean and Sherry Sowers.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The original item that was brought before the then board in 2017 was due to unpayment of taxes on the property itself. The way that this was written at that particular time was the fact that the applicant could not receive a building permit until the taxes were actually paid on that piece of property. State code allows you to do that for the property that you're in question of. You can't attach it to other properties, which was one of the pieces that was thought about trying to be done because we had so many contractors, builders, developers that, I'll stand back a little bit, contractors, developers that actually were very delinquent on numbers of properties, specifically in the Shenandoah Farms area. There's a lot of property out there that they buy as it goes to foreclosure that we have a tax due debt on already. They buy it, they sit on it, they don't pay taxes until they actually build on that property. This solved the problem for the pieces of property that they were building on at that time because it made them pay the taxes prior to getting a building permit. Typically what would happen is once they sold the property, the tax bill would be paid. So you could potentially be waiting 4 or 5 years because of the way the market is. 2006, 2004, that time frame, houses were selling quite rapidly and they bought up a lot of land, and that was prevalent at that time. But as you can see in 2017, it became a problem. One of the aspects that was done at that time was also that for the issuance of the business licenses, and I think Sherry can speak a little bit more on that if you allow her to speak.
Okay, just to kind of give you some history, businesses that are in town only get a town license. Businesses in the county get a county license. So we have a total in Warren County of business licenses that are delinquent from 2014 to 19 of $260,000. Out of that, there is 102, I had to manually go through and count these, which comes to about 107,000 that are only contractors. Now, of this 102 that are delinquent locally, 30 of those people actually renewed their state license at D4. So they renewed the state license, but they didn't pay their local license. Now, it's not that bad as far as contractors are concerned, because we have like 593 active in the county altogether. Now, I also put a total on here of the delinquent business personal property. This is only furniture and fixtures, does not include machinery and tools. This is also for 14 to 19, but this is town and county figures, so it could be town license locations as well as the county. But the total that's due to the county is the delinquent is $716,416. So I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of if you could include it in the local ordinance or agreement or procedure or whatever on the building permits before they were issued for the local business licenses to be paid before they issue the permits, that would work out well. And this $716,000 does not include business vehicles that could be titled in the business name. It's just the business equipment. So there could be more money there involved in a particular business name if they was to tax or to check all of the delinquent personal property in that business name that would be applying for a business building permit.
Mr. Mayor? Is that legally, can we pursue that in the direction that's being suggested, Mr. Mayor?
I'm not sure. I didn't realize that that was what, I thought you were questioning the existing code section and whether or not it could apply to other properties other than the subject property, which is what we were talking about last time. So I'm on my phone trying to figure that out. I anticipated your question.
If I can answer that question, and I won't answer it legally, but by the research that I've done, the building code, which is part of the Code of Virginia, if a jurisdiction, county, city, or town, desires to ordain that, to put it into their code locally, they can require that the business licenses be paid up to date prior to issuing the building permit. That was one of the things that I think the board considered at that time in 2017 and decided not to do at that time. That
Site, Mr. Ian?
that is going to be 54.11141, prerequisites to obtain the business license. It's in section A, and it's the first paragraph. It says, "The applicant shall also furnish satisfactory proof that the taxes or license fees required by any county, city, or town have been paid so as to qualify to bid upon or contract for the work for which the permit has been applied."
David, I know that we talked about it previously. Of course, one of the reasons the board elected not, there were some that I think had concerns that, well, how are we ever going to get out of the hole? We can't get our license and pay. That was one of the issues. The other one was kind of along the concept of being able to title the land differently, basically the shell game of I can put it in somebody else's name. I owe all my taxes in X corporation, and yet when the property ends up in Y corporation's name and they come and pull the permits, is that still a potential issue we would have to, because you don't have to look at the exact wording of the name of that company when it came through to get their business license, correct?
Correct.
You couldn't be a sister company, that wouldn't apply to it.
Basically, it would put a stop on either the contractor applying for the permit or the ownership of the property. And it doesn't matter currently, the way the county code reads is that it has the applicable to the property itself. So if the homeowner wanted to pull a permit and there were taxes owed, they would not be able to pull it. If a contractor came in to pull a permit, they would not be able to pull it because it was attached to the property.
Either direction, either the contractor or the property.
Yes. And like I said, it is allowed as far as by the state law, as far as it's actually stated word for word in the building code as well, that it approaches that. Did you find it, Mr. Ham?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't, it just says that you can, if they haven't paid their license taxes, you can, in fact, you shouldn't give them the permit. I don't think it says that the county has to pass an ordinance, maybe.
That was the literal interpretation that was given at the time, the last time. And that was the reason that it was, as far as the taxes on the property, it had to be in county code to be attached that way.
Okay,
Now, again,
I'm not positive I agree with that, but I
I'm not-
probably would like to think about it and before I give that opinion, especially since it sounds like you got a different one. But the one statute I'm looking at doesn't require an ordinance.
So in that case, simply, we already have the authority to.
It already says that, yeah, but again, I'm looking at one code section. It's nice to have a book where you can flip back and forth and make sure that this is, sometimes you find something, oh, it looks exactly right. It turns out to be wrong. So I'm not familiar with this code section, to be honest with you, Mr. P. So I don't want to give that opinion tonight, but it looks like it right here, so.
That make it a lot easier.
If I could add, this was brought up by the board at the time, and it was also handled by the county attorney at that time. It's not something that I was putting forward at that particular moment. It was a desire to try to recoup monies that were owed to the county. So that's why I'm saying that was that interpretation that was given at that time, that it actually had to be specifically stated. And I do know from past county attorneys, not Mr. Whitten, but Mr. Mitchell, if it wasn't specifically designated in the code, you couldn't do it. So therefore, that's why he, I believe, interpreted if it's required by the county. It's not required at this time because it's not in the county code. But again, that's just the interpretations that I was given at that particular time.
Mr. Stanley and Mr. Ham, can we pursue this just a little bit further? And we're talking almost $1 million, and we're not necessarily strapped for cash, but it's something that we should start trying to collect if we can.
Yeah, I'll have a look at it.
Especially given the previous presentation, I think we could certainly find a use for it. So if the code would require something specific, would you like Mr. Ham to draft up an ordinance for the board to consider?
Yes, sir.
We'd have to have a public hearing, or at least you could put it on a future agenda to consider, if it was required.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I heard about, let's see, they said something to the fact of,
Linda? Why don't you come up and talk? So we can,
Oh,
don't mean to put you on the spot, but we'd like to hear from you.
Okay. I'm Linda McDonough, 1205 High Hop, Linden, Virginia. And they were saying this stuff about how if the property owner wanted to pull a permit to build, see, they don't have to pay the taxes until they do this, right? Okay? Well, I have lots, and some of them are not built. Why the heck am I paying taxes on it for when these other people aren't? I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous, just because of the fact that there's a code. Where's our code? I mean, I have a neighbor that I haven't even told her about this yet because she's over 80 years old and she's got like 6. You know what this is going to do to her? It's going to friggin' crush her. And other people, another girlfriend, I told her about it. She's on the other side of the mountain. It's still Shenandoah Farms though. I mean, this is totally unfair of finding out that, wow, just because these people aren't building on their lots, because they haven't pulled a permit, then they don't have to pay the taxes. Well, by golly, if I didn't pay my taxes, the county will come and take our property and auction it off just for not paying the taxes. So what the heck? I mean, this has been going on for a long time because I'm in Shenandoah Farms. Shenandoah Farms was very big. It's broke off. You got Linden Heights, Blue Valley, you have all these other ones that all broke off. Pennington, he was a big one. He owned he was in Shenandoah Farms. And Switchback Road was too. And then what did he do? He got out of paying all the taxes, took his property out of Shenandoah Farms. The only way to get to any of his property is on Shenandoah Farms roads. Does he pay our sanitary district fee? Nope. And you're talking thousands of lots Pennington has. Right up by us, right up off of High Top there. And the road's closed, and that was our only way, that was our escape route if we needed to leave. And Shenandoah Farms has taken care of that road, hundreds of thousands of dollars on that road. That road was there when my husband's family bought the property in 1969. It was all nice, of course it's gravel, switchback, it used to be a logging road, but it was opened, and it's closed now. And all that money that should have been grandfathered into Shenandoah Farms because of the fact of all of the money and everything we put into that. And then here, these people can get away without paying the friggin' taxes? Even the Shenandoah Farms Board at the time let Pennington get away with not paying what he owed. When they go and they take our stuff, this is just absolutely ridiculous. But I'm really glad and grateful that you all are looking into this. Because let me tell you, I'll be coming. I'll talk to every neighbor. I'll get as many people down here. And you can ask Mr. Fox, boy, we've got lots of people down here before over these issues and everything. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Any additional comments from anyone? Thank you. Our next item of discussion is the Department of Environmental Quality Landfill Financial Assurance. Mr. Stanley.
Mr. Chair, as the owner of 2 solid waste facilities, Warren County is required by DEQ to provide financial assurance for closure, post-closure care, corrective action on an annual basis. In the past, the county has been able to provide this assurance through the use of a local government financial test as required by the Virginia Finance Assurance Regulations for disposal, transfer, and treatment facilities pursuant to Code Section 9 VAC 20-70-210, which is a copy in your packet. For 2019-20, that amount is currently $662,291. DEQ has stated they consider our financial assurance submittal for FY18 as incomplete because the EDA FY 2018 financial statements have not been completed. As you heard from Mr. Parsons, it's probably going to be a little while because they've got to go out and hire an auditor and another audit firm to try to get that completed. The EDA is a component unit of the county in particular because you appoint the board of directors. As an alternative and pursuant to 9 VA C20-7150, the county has been working with Atlantic Union Bank, the county's chief financial partner, to provide an alternative form of assurance. We've working on a trust agreement whereby the bank would hold $662,291 of Warren County funds in trust as a guarantee. The trust agreement allows DEQ to make withdrawals from the fund to pay for closure, post-closure care, or corrective action. As far as we're concerned, that wouldn't be necessary. That's money that's included in Mr. Berry's budget, as we talked about with solid waste today. That's the engineering cost, the other cost of operating the landfill and making sure that we take care of the property. The trust is not revocable by the county, but would terminate when alternative financial assurance is provided, i.e., when the audit and other financial assurance described in Section 210 is finally provided. Again, we were talking about the FY18 audit for the EDA. You also would need the FY19 by the time we get there. So we anticipate this will probably go on for a few years until everything gets caught up. The bank's fee for providing this service is about $3,000 to $3,500 per year. There are additional investment fees and possible other costs, including bank legal costs, that could be chargeable against the trust, which are described in the agreement. We've been working with DEQ on this issue since November, as we would rather not tie up these county funds. However, DEQ will not accept the financial assurance because of the audit issue, and we were asked the county provide the assurance by February 21st. At this time, we're asking that the board will hopefully put this on the agenda on the 18th, so the board could approve the trust agreement, and wanted to make sure, give you the opportunity tonight to ask any questions that you may have. Either myself, Mr. Ham, Mr. Childers has background experience having worked on that before, but there are enforcement penalties if we don't have adequate insurance that we potentially could be liable for. So it's something that we definitely need to take care of. Otherwise, we potentially could lose our permit to operate a transfer station and handle trash for our citizens. So definitely not something we want to do. But this is one of those things that's kind of fallout from the EDA situation that we just got to deal with.
Mr. Childers, do you want to have any additional comment at all?
I'll be glad to answer any questions. I think Mr. Stanley covered everything. It's a requirement of the permitting processes through DEQ. We've got to provide the financial assurance. And again, our annual budgets cover whatever they discover that we might have to do. So I don't see any need that DEQ would be drawing on the trust, but it's something we have to do to meet the DEQ requirement.
Any additional comment from the supervisors?
You would care for a motion?
I'll have to put on the agenda for next week.
Yeah. If there are any questions, because we will have an issue if it doesn't happen by the 21st. If there are any questions or anybody with hesitation, well, it'd probably be nice to flesh any of that out. You know, I looked at this a little bit to see if we could, you know, I've printed in the packet, or Doug printed in the packet, the local government financial test, and section 1C4 is what they are referring to. Received an adverse opinion, disclaimer of opinion, or a qualified opinion from the independent certified public accountant. And it provides the DEQ director the authority to waive that, which is what Doug has been asking for a long time, but they won't. So this is where we are, and we're sensitive to the fact that this is $650,000 worth of money that we can't spend during the term of this, which is not ideal, and which is why I looked at it pretty hard to see if there was some other thing that could be done here. And I guess most administrative agencies have an appeals process. I don't, given the clarity of the statute, I don't recommend that, but this is where we are.
Do you think it's prudent to go ahead and put it on our agenda for on the 18th?
I don't think we really have any choice at this point in time.
I agree.
With
Mrs.
speed.
Miles, would you put that on our agenda for the February 18th? Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Front Royal Golf Club Management and Lease Agreements. Mr. Stanley and Mr. Ham.
I'll do a quick introduction here. Obviously, we had a presentation by New Directions Golf. Mr. Bird talked about what their firm had done at the Gauntlet Golf Course down in Stafford County. They're interested in making some changes, improvements, and the caveat is that they want a $100,000 management fee from the county. That would cap, in essence, cap our cost of the golf course operations for each year. Mr. Ham has been working on the language as far as trying to make sure that it protects the county, that, you know, let's say in 3 years they decided to walk away from the agreement. We want to make sure that the facility and the course are in as good a shape now as they are, and no worse, to turn back over to us. You know, certainly we've talked about the concept of this is the 5th time we put out an RFP to either look at other organizations or other proposals to take over management of the facility. This is the most viable one that we've seen. They certainly seem to know what they're doing in reference to running a golf course. And I would hope they know what they're getting into with not all course, the competition that we have here with 5 other courses. But with that, Jason, you want to talk about the lease agreement?
What you'll be presented probably won't be identical to what you have here. They have an attorney out in Portland that I talked to today who wasn't familiar with and didn't like the subject to appropriation language that we have to put in all of our multi-year contracts. I think he's okay with that now. I've given him the Virginia Constitution that provides that. There were a couple of other changes that he wanted to make to this agreement, so we're still fiddling a little bit. I added that the corporation will perform all services necessary to maintain Front Royal Golf Course and to manage the golf course operations in a manner which maintains a good, family-friendly business reputation of Front Royal Golf Course in the county, and keeps the Front Royal Golf Course running in a condition that meets or exceeds the standards by which the county ran the golf course, and keep the golf course in a good condition, substantially similar to or better than the condition that was kept by the county. And then the lease, and then so that's in the golf course management agreement. And then in the actual lease, it provides that any violation of the golf course management agreement is a default under the lease, which means we can kick them out. They have a liability limit of our remedy is just kicking them out, and I'm going to try to change that in case they have an insurance requirement, and I don't think they would do anything to damage property, but I'm going to try and fiddle with that language. So it's probably not going to be identical to what you have here, but as Doug said, it will cap your liability for the golf course at the $100,000. As originally presented, it also provided that Warren County would pay for a bunch of stuff in addition to that, and I've taken all of that out, and they haven't screamed about that yet, but if they do, I'll report back.
So we're having, we're having a public hearing on this next Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
And at that time, obviously we need to hear from the public, but we wouldn't have to necessarily make a decision that night. We could take into account what's heard and do further research. That would be up to this board's pleasure.
That's correct. Certainly, this is the time of year people want to make changes before the spring golf season starts. It's the opportune time. The board wanted to kick it for a meeting or two. I certainly wouldn't want to go much past March, and plus two, every day that starts to impact what our potential budget if this does fall through. So certainly it'd be nice to have it put to bed in the next 30 to 45 days if possible, but and I'm sure Mr. Bird, if he's going to be coming up and taking over the operation, would like to do so as soon as possible, but I certainly think there's probably some time if you wanted to postpone decisions after the public hearing.
Mr. Stanley, will the golf management company be here to do a presentation next Tuesday?
They are planning, Brandy are planning to be here for the public hearing. And we can talk to him. I don't know if I want him to do the half an hour presentation. We got a number of public hearings on that night.
Right.
If nothing else, maybe he can get up and talk for a couple minutes about what their vision is, maybe.
For the community's education, I think it would be important that they explain what their intentions are to the community at that time.
So we'll pass that along.
Is it prudent tonight to talk about how long of a rental agreement we're actually thinking of?
The lease is 3 years?
The lease is
Well,
3 years, correct?
Yes, but this has 2 5-year extensions at their right. So it actually binds the county as currently written to 13 years if they want it to be 13 years. And there's, but again, I think the salient point, of course, we're capping our management fee and our losses at 100 for the first 3 years. If there is an extension, I think that there needs to be wiggle room for this board and the county to be able to negotiate that fee. There needs to be some, I think even they said, hopefully they're in a position where they're making money, maybe it's at $1 even, at least they're not paying a management fee, or that management fee is reduced. You're an optimistic guy. I could assume that they would want us to pay more after the 3 years, and if you wanted to cap your liability to $100,000, I kind of like the fact that it was silent as to what the term would be, which would, to my mind, to me, it would be the same $100,000. But this is a 13-year commitment as currently presented, and it doesn't have to be. And if the board doesn't like that, of course, from the golf course's perspective, that might be what they're interested in. I mean, if you want to make it only 3 years, they probably don't want to. I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but obviously it's less attractive the shorter it is from their perspective.
I would just think that from their standpoint, they talked about doing some capital improvements, stuff with the clubhouse, changes around there. And I think they would want to have some type of level of comfort, because if they put in $500,000 and after 3 years it just goes away, they're not going to feel very comfortable with that. So I think it still needs to be worked out some more.
I think those are valid questions to ask next week, the folks that are actually here. But Ms. Carter, I think you're exactly right. From the conversations I've had, the nervousness today about the subject to appropriation language, which is not negotiable, has to be in here, was, well, my guy's going to spend a bunch of money on this. And I'm sure if it was not 13 years, I mean, effectively this is 13 years, but their option. If it was 3 years and not 13, or maybe if it was 6 years and not 13, maybe they're not interested, maybe they are. So and maybe you're not interested, maybe you are. So those are questions to ask.
So Mr. Ham, it's 3 years initially, $100,000 a year with the potential of a 5-year extension, or a guarantee of a 5-year or 2 5-year extensions?
As written, it is their option, not the county's.
Not the county's.
So they could exercise the first 5 years and not the second 5 years. They could exercise both, they could exercise neither.
Shouldn't the county have an option to not exercise the next 2 5 years?
In a perfect world, we make a month to month, but of course then they won't come there. And so it's a matter of negotiation. We can have that conversation between now and next week.
But it also, and the one concern would be they got in there, hoping everything went well, but if things didn't, and the course starts to deteriorate, do we have a trigger in there that we can kind of?
We can kick them out. Yeah, you might have a fight over it, but I've added language that I read to you. Together with the lease means that we can boot them out. But they have an opportunity to cure and to fix the problem. So, and it's not, I don't know if anybody out here is in the landlord business, it's not necessarily easy to boot someone off of the property once they have a lease. I will warn you of that. But I have provided that remedy in here.
Or do we have any type of levels or triggers that they have to do certain maintenance, make sure that the greens are still green and the fairways are cut and all those things?
It's not as specific as that. It's what I read in section 2, the second full sentence. Corporation will perform all services necessary to maintain the golf course and manage the operations in a manner which maintains a good family-friendly business reputation. of the golf course and the county, keeps the Front Royal Golf Course running in a condition that meets or exceeds the standards by which the county ran the Front Royal Golf Course, and keeps the Front Royal Golf Course in a good condition substantially similar to or better than the condition that was kept by the county. So we can't possibly be with a multi-acre property specific as to, what color the grass is going to be or what's going to happen here or there, but that's the language I put in. And I don't know that they've agreed to that yet, but the 3 issues they had didn't have anything to do with that.
I don't want to get to the point of the things that we checked, they didn't fertilize it on this day or that day or whatever, but I think what you put in kind of gives me at least a little bit of level of comfort that they will maintain it, at least to the level we currently have.
And that's in there. That's what that language says.
Is there anything in there that covers flood damage and who does the cleanup and that kind of thing in case there is significant flooding?
Yeah, they are. And to answer your question, I don't think so. I mean, there's an insurance requirement, but I don't recall the insurance requirement that deals with, is this property in the floodplain?
Absolutely.
So you won't get insurance anyway.
So I'm thinking of the debris and the erosion, depending on what type of flood we could possibly get during their occupancy there.
I would say the answer is that lease is silent, but using the analogy, if you were renting your house to somebody and a tree fell on it, it would be the landlord's problem. So I think that if there's a flood on the golf course, it's going to be our problem. And you won't be able to buy insurance for that.
And typically in the past, it's been, the fairway itself, waters come up and go down. You may have, the bigger issue is you could have some debris, like Jason mentioned, trees and stumps that washed in and have to get deposited. Maybe we could add some language to that if we aren't responsible. We'll talk about that. We're going to add something.
Yeah, I think that we can ask them that, but if I was a golf course company, I would not agree to take on the flood responsibility. But you can certainly ask them that.
We'd still be responsible. We'd still be responsible for the Carson Trail, and if there was a flood, it damages the slip cradle fence or puts debris there, that would still be the county's responsibility, right?
That was in the RFP under the section 7. The course includes a walking path, Carson Trail, travels from the lower parking lot along the Shenandoah to connect the Rockland Park site. Walking trail will be kept open to the general public, maintained by the county. So that's typically what's in the RFP.
Well, also one of the things that we're actually considering, and why we're even considering it, is the cost savings. It's considerable, and if we only have to put $100,000 in it to keep it active, and they're going to be doing extension, doing additional things to the property to increase its value, and then at some point in time we may get it back. I mean, it may work out for all of us, but the lease has got to be correct. And we've got to be able to protect ourselves just as much as they want to protect themselves. Any additional comment on that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're done for the evening.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Are these, the budgets that you saw tonight, are they going to be public online?
EDA?
I can update the work session agenda on our website.
And put those budgets, put the stuff that you got in there? Please, because I'd like to see what they look like.
I can also make you a copy tonight if you would like. I'm in people like copies.
I have a question.
Thank you.
On the golf course, have they thought about maybe like here they want the county to pay $100,000 a year for these people to rent and run it? What about the option of maybe them purchasing the property? Obviously, it doesn't look like in there that the county is paying $100,000 a year. And what if they get very successful and they're really pulling in the bucks and boy, everybody's going and everything? Why would the county be paying them? I mean, so maybe in 3 years, I mean.
Mr. Stanley, would you answer that?
Yeah, so essentially the property was given to the citizens of the town of Front Royal and the county of Warren. We can't sell it to somebody else. It would basically revert back to the family that originally gave it, the Carson family and their heirs. So it's not like we can't turn around. We can work a lease agreement, have somebody come in and operate it on the property, but we would not be in a position to say, I want to sell it to David Bean to operate a golf course. I can't do that.
But we can give it back to the family, right?
You could give it back to the family, that's correct.
And then you wouldn't have to pay anything, right?
You could do that.
That is an option.
That is a very, that's just sort of like wanting to have where the builders, is if you have an empty lot and you weren't pulling a permit, they don't have to pay taxes, you know? So, I mean, every way it is, I coupon shop, you know? So,
Good.
thank you.
Maybe if they get it very successful, turn it into a very successful club, maybe we ought to consider a certain percentage at some point, after someone coming back to us again.
I think that's what we're talking about after that third year. We feel there needs to be a mechanism for us if the financial circumstances change.
If they
They're
start making $400,000 or $500,000 off of it a year, and we're still paying them $100,000, I think we ought to be reaping some of that back to us again.
And I believe that we think it the same way.
Good, that's.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, I know there was questions about taxes. You do have to pay your taxes, even if you're not doing a permit. And for those that, beyond 2 years of treasurer, thank you, Jamie, for being here. You turn them over to the 2 outside firms after what, 2 years? 3 years. So anybody who doesn't pay their taxes, they get turned over to the outside firms, and then they make the call, do the title work to be able potentially to bring it to sale. We do have a sale coming. I believe there are some properties in the Schindler Farm Sanitary District on February 20th here in the boardroom. If you're interested in coming and purchasing, that gets them back on the tax rolls and hopefully will pay off some of that delinquent tax. So, as far as we're concerned, the sooner to that 3-year time frame we can get them on the market. And some of those, I know in the past, you mentioned one property and one, I'll say developer, WP Associates. The last time we had a sale, they had about 10, 12 lots from that developer were in part of the tax sale. So they do get sold, even if they're not pulling a permit, they get sold at auction. So again, if you're interested, February 20th, I believe, 2 o'clock, Jamie, here? Oh, yeah.
It's in this room as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
There's probably a lot of background information to this golf course issue that I'm not up to speed on per se. But we've got 4 other golf courses. And I think I saw that the utilization of this one wasn't all that high. So not only are we paying someone else to run it, we're also missing the opportunity for taxes on property that is the county's property. So I guess my thought is, if we have enough recreation, golf recreation in the other 4, why not either make it into a park that doesn't require a lot of maintenance, doesn't require a lot of annual investment, or give it back and have it be a tax income producing property again, rather than having it be an expense for us.
The way the deed is currently written is that it has to be operated for public recreation, including golf. We're in court right now. We'd like to get the words including golf taken off. And we looked at more passive recreational uses of the site. Maybe it could be just walking trails, a dog park, other stuff that would be less costly to maintain. But and then we're basically getting sued because we were trying to remove that language by the air. So we're in the middle of that process right now. But as long as we own it and operate it, golf has to be included with it. And I think what the board was looking for is there's somebody else out there willing to come in and, you know, potentially generate more tax revenue, meals tax, help with the lodging tax. And this outfit is looking to market the facility to a wider audience, and looking to develop youth golf programs to help the two high schools. So it's I think a step in the right direction. Is the best answer. I'm not at this point, certainly I don't know if I'm the one to answer that. Maybe it takes a couple years into it. I think this really might be the last opportunity for one of the oldest courses in Virginia. The site is on the National Landmarks Registry, and it's a Virginia Historic Landmark. So you're not going to go in and bulldoze everything, more than likely than not. It's also a Civil War battlefield. So there are lots of good historic elements to the property, and which could be a different type of park down the road. But right now, our hands are a little bit tied with it, what we can do with it. But I do think this proposal represents one of the real options to not only keep it as a golf course, but limit our liability financially to be able to take off.
What's the downside of the county of giving the property back to the persons who donated? What's the downside of doing that?
We've talked about it. We're in court in the middle of the lawsuit, so I don't want to talk right now. I'll be happy. Gary, come see me.
But the lawsuit is relevant to how we use the property.
The lawsuit is that it's actually a title suit. It's over the title insurance on the property. It's in court right now. Come see me. Come see me when we talk about it. But yeah, the property across the street is worth 300,000 acres commercial property. It's ag. Likelihood of the board ever rezoning a property on the National Register to commercial is probably slim to none. So it probably would stay ag. Probably would stay agricultural property, and of course the property on the lower side is on the floodplain. You can't build on it. I think the county, the tie-in, we've got with this about a mile of frontage on the Shenandoah River. We're probably the largest landowner outside the state, Indiana State Park. It's a couple private farms.
But the only persons benefiting from that are the few people who are going there playing golf now.
Except that the trail's open for the general public. We have a lot of people who go down there and walk their dogs and walk that trail every day. So there is some elements of it that are open to the general public. We looked at, can we broaden that appeal to a larger segment? Well, we can only do that when we get the golf concept taken off of it. That still may be an option down the road.
Sounds like a sweet deal for the people who donated to the county.
Remember, that was 1938, and I think they were trying, and that was the only golf course that had swim pool, tennis courts. That was the only such facility. The original course was built by the CCC boys. There's another little element to that. It's a great history to the site. I think we'd rather have the history without the cost associated with that. I'm just trying to find a way to help make that work.
Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.